here, I got the possibility that there may be a 0 in a denominator. Is there some value of y that makes that denominator 0? You see that? If you don't see it, and sometimes it's going to be a little bit more sophisticated so that we can't see it, the strategy, take your denominator, set it equal to 0, and solve. Remember what you just find, you have just found what your value of the variable cannot be. So you are accurate in your estimation. The domain is anything except, in this case, -9. So when I put in the, ask for the domain, anything except, or all real numbers except, here it is, -9. All real numbers except -9. Right there? Uh-oh. Find the domain of the function. F of x is square root of it.
Can you scroll back up just a second?
That right there? You're going to be given an expression like this. You're going to be asked to find the domain. As soon as you're asked to find the domain, you look at your two limitations. Number one, is there a possibility of getting a 0 in the denominator? Yes. And that would be if x is what? -7. You can see that. So I can go ahead and write that one observation down. X cannot equal -7. Is that right? That's from number one. I also have limitation number two. Is there the possibility of me getting a negative under a radical with even index? Is there a possibility? I mean, can you think of an x that would make it negative under there? -8, right? -8 plus 7 is -1, square root of -1. Problems with my calculator. It's not a real number. One of those pesky I numbers. Okay, so I do have problems. I have a strategy when I have that. Did you write it down? Set the radicand, that's whatever's under the radical, greater than or equal to 0, and solve the thing. Once again, why greater than or equal to 0? It's not negative. This is another way of saying it's not negative. If something is greater than 0 or equal to 0, it's not negative. So we want to avoid this whole product, this whole sum, being negative. So I say it's got to be greater than or equal to 0. All right? Let's solve it. X is greater than or equal to -7. That's by limitation number 2. But both those guys got to be true. Both of them have to be true. So everybody watch for a second. Here's my domain. It's everything greater than or equal to -7. Uh-oh. But not -7.
So would you say x is just greater than?
Just greater than, absolutely. So if it's got to be greater than or equal to -7, but not -7, that scratches out the equal to part right there. So it's just x is greater than -7. So put those two together, two limitations, and my domain is x is greater than -7. That's pretty clever, huh? You got two limitations. You got a fraction, and there's a possibility of getting a 0 in the denominator. You do have a radical with the even index, and there is a possibility of getting negatives. So I have to consider both those things together. That means this and that. They both have to be true.
So if you had the cube root of x plus 7, then it would just be x non-equal negative.
That's right. If that was the cube root, you would just deal with the denominator. Yes.
Going back a second, copy down those
All right. That's it.
limitations.
And remember, these are specific limitations. They do not apply to every time you have a fraction. They do not apply to every time you have a radical. For instance, what if I asked you for the domain of g of x here? What would you say is the domain of g of x?
All real numbers.
Absolutely all real numbers. Well, wait a minute, it's a fraction. Well, here's the question. Is there the possibility of getting a 0 in the denominator? No. It's always going to be 8. No matter what you put in there for x, the bottom part of the fraction will never be 0. It's always going to be 8. So, domain, all real numbers. How about this guy? Any possibility of getting a negative under a radical with the even index?
No.
Why not? It's an odd index. Did you notice that? Odd indices are no problem. I can have negative cube roots. Your calculator will figure a negative cube root. It's just a negative number. So the domain, all real numbers. All right, let's go back to... So what do we find out? It's just greater than negative 7, right? Oh my gosh. That's the bottom. I did them all. I'm so embarrassed. I apologize profusely, ladies and gentlemen.
You didn't do number
You didn't do number 8.
Yeah, I can live with it. I can sing tonight, all right? Anybody got a question before we...